Hi there, I'm Philip Eidson, the founder of Art of Procurement. And at Art of Procurement, we help procurement professionals like you plan and deliver change with confidence. Whether it's through the mapping and prioritization of your change journey, securing the subject matter expertise that you need to help you along the way, or assisting you and your team to take action on what they learn, and what's really important is on also what they already know. And of course, a big part of what we do is this weekly podcast where we share strategies and tactics that aim to inspire and help elevate your change journey. I want to thank you for joining me today. Let's go straight into the show. Hi there, and welcome to episode 240 of The Art of Procurement. Before I introduce today's guest, I did just want to share a couple of different things. First, we just finalized our 2019 media partnership with ProcureCon. We just did that earlier in the week. And as a result, Art of Procurement listeners who are practitioners can receive 25% off their ticket for any ProcureCon North America event. So if you are interested in that, you're thinking about going to ProcureCon, you can check out the entire calendar of events this year, along with details about the discount code. And those are all at a single page that we have. It's artofprocurement.com/procurecon. That's artofprocurement.com/procurecon. Secondly, I wanted to just remind you that we're in the midst of what we believe is the very first crowdfunding campaign for a procurement product. It's for our 60-minute Catalyst lunch and learn sessions. So by crowdfunding, we're actually able to significantly reduce the cost of the program. It's just $2,500 for 10 built-for-you lunch and learn sessions. So if that sounds of interest, you want to go and check out the crowdfunding campaign, you can go to artofprocurement.com/Kickstarter. That's artofprocurement.com/Kickstarter. And that campaign runs until March the 8th, 2019. Now, today on the show, I'm delighted to welcome Matt Clark. Matt is the president and COO of Corcentric. And Corcentric provides a suite of services and technologies across AP, across billing, and across procurement. And I've come to know Corcentric just over the past couple of years, really, through their acquisition of SourceOne management services. And if you're following the P2P news, you may have seen that they entered into an agreement to purchase the P2P software provider Determine last week. And so in our conversation, I asked Matt to share Corcentric's procurement strategy, particularly related to the recent news about Determine. We then dive into the accounts payable and procurement relationship and explore ways in which we as procurement can actually more effectively partner with the accounts payable team so that we can help them essentially to help us. I think that empathy and understanding the challenges of the functions that we work with is so important. So I really wanted to deep dive into the hearts and the mind of the AP team, figure out how we were aligned and how we could best work with each other. Now, before I go into the interview, I do just want to say that we had some mic problems. I recorded this on-site at Corcentric Symposium last week, and it just means that I had to amplify the voices, so you're just going to hear a little bit more background noise than normal in the interview. I don't think it takes away from anything, but if you're hearing that, I just wanted to let you know why. All right, so let's go into the discussion. And I started by asking Matt if he could provide just a little bit more background on Corcentric's evolution, building up to the purchase of SourceOne and the agreement to purchase Determine.
Sure. So Corcentric was founded in the late 1990s, really around the concept of trying to optimize, the B2B transaction interaction between buyers and sellers. That was the simple kind of principle it was founded upon. Mm-hmm. And our founder, Doug Clark, spent a lot of time actually in the truck transportation industry, and he saw a gap in terms of larger entities in that space having a serious advantage over medium and smaller entities in that they had better technology, better procurement talent, and more purchasing leverage. And he said, I think there's a way to kind of level the playing field. And so he came up with this concept of saying, I'm going to go out and kind of band together these medium and smaller customers, and then go to national suppliers with national distribution networks and say, can we put together some programs that will allow these customers to kind of level the playing field with their larger competitors. And the one big differentiator in that concept that was kind of differentiated from what other people were doing with kind of marketplaces and things of that nature was determining what was going to have value to the supplier as well. So it wasn't a one-sided equation of, okay, I'm going to create a solution for the buy side without kind of thinking about the supply side. So the secret sauce was really saying, not only are we going to put these programs together and bring benefit to the suppliers from kind of a single channel for marketing, single channel for billing, but saying, look, we're going to take the credit position here. We're going to take the credit risk. We're going to manage the billing. We're going to pay you on time every time without deductions, regardless of what's going to happen on the buy side of the equation, and let us worry about that. So that was a tremendous value add to the suppliers, and that really got the flywheel going. And so that was the original founding principle, was to provide these programs.
So you're providing a lot of trade financing for these smaller...
and that was the big differentiator. And so the suppliers loved it, the buyers loved it, and the flywheel just got going from there. So that was the original founding principle, and that was, the extent of our involvement was, going to customers, and some of them would use one program, some of them used 20 programs. It was very menu driven, but that was how we grew the original business. And then from being in the middle of those transactions, we really saw that we could do much, much more than we were doing. So it started as really programs designed for companies that owned and operated fleets. And then we said, well, this formula would work if we went into kind of indirect categories. And same principles, go find some good indirect suppliers that would see the value in the model. And so we expanded our program portfolio. And then we started seeing, okay, there's opportunities on the AP side. So we were managing the billing for a small segment of these customers that were buying through these programs. And we said, okay, let's, we had customers coming to us and saying, I love how you're invoicing me. It's clean, it's easy. Can you help me with the rest of my invoicing that's a mess? And so that's how we started.
Always provides a good opportunity when folks are coming to you asking for help.
So then we were like, all right, we got to get serious about this whole AP automation, AP workflow thing. And it was really starting to emerge in the early 2000s. And so we, you sit there like anything else, and we were making build, buy, partner decision. We said, okay, we either got to build a much more robust solution, or we got to go out and buy one. And so then we went out in the marketplace and found an AP automation solution. We're able to acquire a product that became our platform in that space. So we started to grow the whole AP side. And then same thing on the flip side. The suppliers were coming to us and saying, it's so clean, the billing through your process. Can you help me with the rest of my billing? It's a mess. I'm not, we stink at billing. It's not a core competency. So then we started getting involved on the billing solution side of things. So that's all kind of fast forward to where we are today. And really our message in the marketplace is that, we want to put ourselves in the middle of as many B2B transactions as we possibly can, optimize it for both sides of the equation, both the seller and the buyer, regardless of who brought us to the party, and really say, we're going to optimize how companies purchase, pay, and get paid. So it's a very simple way of saying, we're going to help in procurement, we're going to help in AP, we're going to help in AR. Sometimes we're going to address one of those areas for a company, sometimes we're doing all three, and it's really all about combination of technology, services, and consulting that we're bringing to the table to generate that optimization, and create that optimization.
And it's great to actually grow with your clients. So I'm sure that you have clients who were early adopters in the very early days, who are now, you've got this whole suite of solutions that support them as you have grown and they've grown.
It's awesome, especially coming to our customer symposium that we're at right now. You relationships that are 15, 20 years old, and somebody that started off as a purchaser of Michelin tires through our original Michelin program, and now they're doing 20 plus programs. We're doing AP automation. It's
like they're part of the family as well.
Exactly.
So more recently, 9 months ago, you acquired SourceOne Management Services. That's a name that will be familiar to a lot of folks in the procurement space. They're a strategic procurement consultancy. And then just a couple of days ago, at least as we record this, you entered into a definitive agreement to acquire the source-to-pay and contract management software provider, Determine. I just wonder if you could share a little bit of your thinking behind those moves.
So both moves obviously very strategic in our view, and the SourceOne opportunity being pretty unique in the sense that we looked at what we were doing in the procurement world, and we were saying, it's somewhat narrowly focused. So when we go to talk to a customer, what we had to talk about as it related to procurement was, okay, we have this portfolio of programs. We think there's value in you using some or all of them. But if a customer looked at those programs and said, I'm doing okay on my own, I'm comfortable with where my programs are at, we didn't have much else to talk about. So it was a very kind of bottom-up approach to a customer to say, here, look at our menu of programs. Let's talk about this one. Let's talk about office supplies. And then they're like, whatever.
We already have a deal for that.
We're good. And then it was like, all right, the conversation ends there. And so The SourceOne opportunity was unique in that I kind of stepped back and looked at it and said, in order for us to grow the value proposition and what we're doing in procurement, we need to be taking this from a more kind of top-down approach. And I looked at it and I said the best way to do that is, what procurement leaders are looking for is somebody to help them with their strategy, right? Yeah. And part of that strategy is going to be potentially
some execution on the end of it.
Yeah, procurement programs, technology, services. And so I looked at the SourceOne opportunity, and the more I got to know what they were doing and how they were doing it, and it was differentiated to me from what other procurement consultants were out there doing, I said this is a perfect fit for where we want to go, and it's in relatively short period of time, it has been a game changer for us. I mean, we're leading with the procurement consultancy, the expertise, earning that trusted advisor status, and then working hand in hand with the customer to say, let's put a roadmap to get you from where you are to where you need to be as a procurement operation to be best in class, and then taking that journey with the customer. Fast forward to the agreement we just entered into to acquire to determine. Our strength from a platform perspective has been mostly focused on kind of the back end of the transaction. So AP automation, payments, that's where our kind of bailiwick has been. We identified a need, again, just much like when we first got involved in AP automation. Look, if we're going to be a serious player in this space, we need to have a platform.
You want end-to-end.
That has the full end-to-end capabilities, so that when we're taking that customer on that journey, we can provide the right technology that will help support the overarching strategy. So we see that determined platform as one that has all the pieces that we think is necessary to have kind of a full source-to-pay contract lifecycle management capabilities that really rounds out our solution offering. So we think we have if and when the deal closes, we think we have a pretty differentiated offering which combines an end-to-end technology platform, a true best-in-class consultancy shop, and then lots of services around it. A GPO, for lack of a better term, with programs that can deliver tangible value, programs that we own and control and design. And then also our willingness and ability to get into the financial flow, which helps, like I said, optimize both for the supply side and the buy side. Put all those pieces together, it's a pretty differentiated and pretty complete, comprehensive model.
And you're starting to have different tools, if you will, or different ways that you can help people depending on where they are on the transformation journey.
Exactly.
So you can help them as they grow because you're bringing in other offerings as you start to build
And that's a great point you make there, which is, I think the mistake that a lot of folks make is that, they're taking a cookie cutter approach to all opportunities. So they're going to talk to potential customers and they're saying, here's our formula. And, that's where I think it's key to have that consultancy element, because the very first step is kind of assessing where you're at, and depending on where you're at, the need might be different. Step one is not going to be the same for a Fortune 500 company as it is for a company that's just getting started and hitting a big growth trajectory.
I mean, they may be at the same place.
Maturities are all different.
They may be even at the same place in the transformation journey, but what's come before has been completely different. So it kind of contextualizes what the need is. I want to go into talk about accounts payable, given that that's an area that is certainly one of the strengths that you have. It's where you've got a lot of background. It's also where alignment with procurement is really important. And I often think that it's one of those relationships where we don't necessarily, where either of us don't know what the other one does.
Right.
And I'm sure, think about what they do in the most simplest of terms. Like an AP person probably thinks procurement just buys something, and we think AP just pays for something. And there's obviously a lot more in those black boxes. I wonder, in your experience, what does best-in-class alignment between procurement and AP actually look like?
Yeah, sure. It's funny. I spoke about this. So I spoke about kind of 4 emerging trends in the world of procurement and finance at our symposium here yesterday. And one of those 4 emerging trends was the need for better collaboration between procurement and finance. And I threw a stat up on the slide that I think caught a lot of people's attention. 90% of companies would self-assess that they don't have
that they're not aligned.
Any collaboration between procurement and finance. And then I put a mirror image stat up there that said alignment between procurement and finance, misalignment between procurement and finance is leaving 60% of operational savings on the table.
The savings leakage as a result of it.
I was talking to a bunch of business leaders in the room and saying, we kill to find solutions that are going to create 60% operational savings.
Yep.
And here we are, something totally in our own control as business leaders to do. We gotta be doing this. So in terms of like best in class collaboration, I really think it starts from, and this is what that's the so what of what I said. So I said, well, all right, we all agree this is important. Now, now what do you do? So, I really talked about looking at it from a top-down perspective. So I think where things get off the rails from a collaboration perspective is everybody comes at it from their own kind of perspective, a very bottom-up perspective. Yeah. So it's, okay, this is the way I've always done it. These are kind of the blocking and tackling things I do day to day. Well, these are the things I do. And what I really encourage is for people to say, okay, let's take a step back and let's not try to jam, two kind of historical, processes and groups together and just try and mesh it.
This is our way, that's our way.
Let's get together and take a very top-down business strategy approach to say, okay, what would kind of utopia look like from an end-to-end perspective? Because really, procurement and finance are representing, two ends of a life cycle of an engagement with a supplier, right? Procurement's, mostly involved on the front end, setting up contracts, sourcing, all that stuff, putting those things in place. And then really finance is responsible for the, kind of day-to-day execution of making sure that, that when the transactions are taking place, that, they're getting paid, bills are getting paid. And so,
and making sure that those savings are actually ring-fenced and taken away from the bottom line.
Yeah, the actualization of the the work that was done by procurement is being done. And so, stepping back and saying, okay, what would it look like from a people, process, technology perspective to be, optimal? What would an optimal situation look like for the company as a whole? And then how can we, work together to identify the right technology and make sure both parties are represented in that process to make sure that it's covering what's needed. And really stressing, and this isn't kind of self-promotion, but I said, it's really important to engage outside third-party resources, like a group like SourceOne to come in and really kind of explain, because that's half the battle is, again,
like bringing people together, isn't
understanding, it? Having somewhat of a mediator come in and say, look, we understand what the challenges are kind of, end to end here. We can help you kind of take this journey. And so, from a technology perspective, from a process perspective, top down approach, really kind of reimagining the process and then working together to kind of develop that process. And it's extremely critical. The other thing I talked about yesterday was, in our discussions with the supplier side of the equation, it's actually one of the number one frustrations from a supplier's perspective is the misalignment between procurement and finance. So a lot of times it's thought of as kind of a between our four walls issue, but it actually permeates out to the supply side because suppliers almost feel like they're managing two different customers in one, right? So they deal with procurement, they deal with finance. Procurement and finance aren't talking to each other, so they're like, I have to play referee for your
internal organization.
Exactly.
No, I feel that as a supplier now, having had years on the practitioner side, and in larger companies now that I have my own business, I feel that acutely because you work with procurement, to help you. To contract, to help you do the job and the work that you've been contracted to do, because what I'm doing is helping procurement people. Right. But then when it comes time to getting paid, it's a whole different ballgame. And, I always knew when I was a practitioner the challenges of getting paid on time. But was I motivated to help suppliers solve that?
Right.
I'm not sure if I was, because
it wasn't acute enough.
And now I'm on the other side of the table. I realize how important cash flow is and how difficult it even is to get paid on time. And so you find that you're just shooting off emails into an abyss of, like, I'm going to copy everyone in procurement that I know. I'm going to copy everybody in finance and the general AP desk. And hopefully someone's going to do something about it. So I feel the pain.
Not an uncommon.
I feel the pain of the suppliers now. You mentioned about kind of understanding each other, and I think empathy is really, really important to, and it's something that it's not because we deliberately don't look to try and be empathetic.
It's not malicious.
It's just not the mindset sometimes because we've got our own priorities. So I want to go inside the heart and the mind of an accounts payable leader, so that we as procurement can understand that a little bit more. What is keeping them up at night?
So I think it's. I think one of the things you'll hear consistently from AP folks is, they always feel like kind of they're the last ones to know. And so that's like a little bit of that mindset, procurement's maybe gone out and negotiated a new contract with a new supplier, and maybe they replaced a supplier that was very smooth and frictionless from a billing and processing perspective with somebody that maybe isn't as smooth. And so the classic case, they go and negotiate a slightly better price with a new supplier, but not really understanding kind of the back end cost of inefficient billing and maybe inconsistent pricing and things of that nature. So I think from the AP side of things, finance people in general are kind of logic brain people, so they want predictability, they want consistency, they want to make sure that that they don't like surprises. It's just the nature of those folks and those individuals. And so I think that's where I think at the end of the day it's communication. That's what they're really looking for, so that they can do their job. I mean, they really at the end of the day are trying to do their job, which is be that gatekeeper, making sure that that funds are going out on time, that the right funds are going out on time, and that that these transactions are legit and that are valid, and being able to do that without the name of the game in AP now is being able to grow the business without having to grow your overhead. So every AP department is trying to look for ways to say, okay, we're not the place that gets to pile up resources. When the business grows, the expectation is we have 5 people now. We're going to double our invoice volume, but we're still
got 6 people now.
Maybe you might get one person, or maybe an intern, or like a part-time person. And so that's the other thing that really keeps AP up at night, is like, okay, they're being it's very demanding what they're being asked to do, and they're being asked to support more and more volume with less relatively speaking people. So that's where kind of process efficiencies, automation, and things kind of working smoothly are so critical, because one exception that takes somebody off track for an hour or 2 hours, can cripple the
throws a spanner in the whole system.
So that's where the focus is on. The name of the game is we want to be focusing in AP on exceptions, and we want 90+% of the transactions to go through without without much interaction from
touch basically. Exactly. One of the stats that you shared in your presentation yesterday that jumped out to me. It jumped out to me because I think sometimes we in procurement feel like we have the same challenge, and that's that 1 in 10 or only 1 in 10 businesses see a strategic role for their AP department. Obviously, that is something that keeps an AP leader up at night. It's like, how do I become relevant? But I'm interested in what you see. What does the 1 in 10 that is strategic or is seen as strategic, what are they doing differently?
Sure. So I think when I brought that stat up yesterday, I followed that up with a couple of what I think are key points. One would be the ones that are viewing it as strategic are understanding the value of the data that the back office is producing or sitting on, really. And have actually made a shift towards much like I always make the analogy, much like sports teams have done. They've understood the value in data analytics and having data scientists and algorithm experts and people like that on staff. The people that are seeding their back office with those types of people are the ones that are taking that treasure trove of data and turning it into actionable. They're being proactive. So when you start doing that, it totally changes the perception, and it kind of blows people's minds. Like I talk to AP, CFOs and accounts payable managers, and I'm like, have you ever thought about your next hire for your department? Instead of just being kind of a regular admin type person, somebody that has a passion. That can do the admin work. A statistician or somebody who likes to play with numbers. So they can do the work, they can execute the job, but while they're doing the job, they're sitting there thinking about what can be done, kind of next level with the data. So that's a big, you start doing things like that, all of a sudden you start producing stuff for the rest of the organization from that data. That'll change the perception right then. Straight away, because one of the biggest challenges that we have in procurement, when we think about doing spend analytics, is the quality of the data, and its quality of the data is it's keyed from invoices. Exactly. Now, there's education on our side to help the suppliers understand what they should be putting on an invoice so we can actually better use that data. But then the data that we get comes out of whatever's keyed in, and that often isn't good data. So that's one of the biggest not a challenge, I think it's an opportunity and it's another
for procurement and AP to work together, is to enhance data as opposed to us saying, well, the data's just bad, so I can't do anything with it. Well, actually, how do we both work together to make the data better? Instead of just throwing it over the fence back and forth, let's get together and figure out, because often,
the combination of, purchase order data, invoice data, synthesizing that and, putting those two pieces together can get you better quality data so you can do some more with it. The other way that I see, kind of the back office AP function becoming more strategic is really what can be done from a payment modality and a payment timing perspective.
Right.
So there's so many ways to get creative that aren't one-sided either. There's ways to collaborate with suppliers. There's ways to interject third parties into the mix to really kind of relieve the friction. The classic friction. Suppliers want to get paid earlier or on time. Buyers are trying to
push it out to 75 days or 90 or 120.
The friction you have there.
Yeah.
So there's lots of things you can do with virtual credit cards, with supply chain finance providers that can create a win-win for both parties, but also create a revenue stream for the AP department that then can be deployed to do other things.
Yeah.
So that's another way to become strategic.
Yeah, and as a small business, again, I mean, we love programs like that because it just allows you to get your hands on, especially when you're working with big companies, because the bigger companies are typically the ones who are pushing out the payment terms further and further. And, you could talk about having more innovative programs for small businesses where you're paying them in a week or something, because it's really a drop in the bucket in terms of your cash, the working capital position, but at least having the opportunity for them to buy down the cash.
And I always say it's amazing, people get on the kind of accelerated payment. That's, again, like you said, that's a great option for certain businesses. But, even, one of our founding principles when we started in our space was just paying on time.
Yeah.
Like before you even talk about acceleration, okay, you have 30-day terms. How often are you actually getting paid in 30 days? When you go to a supplier and say, look, I can guarantee you're going to get paid on day 30 every single time. Yeah. They're like, hallelujah, praise the Lord.
Because at least they can budget, they can plan for
predictability, because predictability of cash flow and being able to know that from this particular buyer, I'm going to get paid on. That's real tangible value for a supplier, and that value will come back to you in other ways, whether it's better pricing, whether it's better service. Those things make a difference.
No, absolutely, because it's the relationship.
Yeah.
Because I think of 80% of our invoices, I would say, as a small business, are paid late. Yeah. And there's not really that much you can do about it except continue to throw emails in.
You're left that choice to say, you be the squeaky wheel, and if it gets really bad, your choice is, okay, do I end this relationship? But often when you don't really want to do that, you're not going to do that. It has to be really bad for you to get to that point.
So that's one of the challenges I see that I wonder how we in procurement can help AP is giving visibility into payment dates, because I feel like that's usually a really manual process, and it's emails essentially, like, when's this person going to get paid, and it takes a couple of emails, but it's just a highly manual process. There's very few ways that I can go and say, okay, I know I'm going to get paid on this day again, so at least I can plan, even if it's not my payment day. At least I got an idea of where I am in the system.
One of the things that I really recommend on that front is, and this is another way that AP and procurement can collaborate, is really getting AP's input when you're doing any kind of supplier scorecarding. So, evaluating how the total relationship is functioning. So, obviously, procurement's got their own set of metrics that they want to measure and scorecard on. But then getting input from AP to say, okay, how clean are the transactions? How many issues or disputes are you having to file? And all those things, and then you start to scorecard that out. And we've seen some really cool stuff on that front where you kind of net it out to a total kind of supplier value score. Mm-hmm. And when you're measuring kind of the whole thing, ease of interfacing, the cleanliness of the billing, the reduction of friction, it's amazing when you start to stack rack it and you're like, wow, our best supplier is actually this supplier because competitive pricing, this. And they're at the top of the list, and you look at some that are at the bottom of the list, it's a real eye-opener. You're like, wow.
You change the way that you deal with, that you perhaps manage with those suppliers. It creates a really good holistic conversation when procurement goes back to supplier to say, look, your product is good, we're pretty happy with your pricing, but you're expensive to work with
because we're, money's flying out the back door because we're having to manage exceptions with you. And then that changes the dialogue with that supplier, and it makes it a better, healthier relationship, as a whole.
So I just got one last question, because I know that our time is coming short here. And it's just as you think back to the symposium we've had here in Orlando the last couple of days, is there a particular aha moment that you've taken away from something that you've heard or somebody that you've spoken to, or a piece of wisdom perhaps that is going to help you, as you go back to the office on Monday?
Yeah, I think probably, that we have a great lineup of speakers, and I have, pages and pages of notes that I've taken here.
Yeah.
But I think the overall message from a gentleman by the name of Michael Tracy, who spoke yesterday, and he really spoke on kind of, transactional processing disruption, and really kind of, I think, stretched a lot of people's mind. And it really, it was encouraging for me because it's kind of supporting a lot of what we're talking about doing, kind of the holistic view of both the buy and the buy and supply side, the optimization of the transaction and simplification. He was very, the underlying theme was that we've built this system that is way overly complicated. Pricing schemas and ways in which transactions are just totally over-engineered, and he kind of compared it. Everybody compares everything to Amazon, but he kind of compared it to
like
Amazon.
3 clicks and you're done.
Right, yeah, and he's like, they just removed all of the complexity out of it, and so you'll buy stuff off of Amazon just because it's so damn easy to do.
Right.
It's
you already bought it before you got time to make it. You regret.
This is cool. I just have to hit a button, and it shows up on my doorstep later that day. So he's like, it's there's definitely bigger challenges in B2B. So he wasn't unrealistic in saying like, it's easy.
We all
to
need
get
to go
there.
do that. Yeah.
But he was basically making the point that from a supply chain perspective, from a transaction processing perspective, in the next 5 years, there's going to be really transformational change in terms of removing complexity out of the process and saying, look, I don't need to have 900 pricing rules. Let me just give my best price to a good group of customers and create seamless, easy to do transactions. And then talked about kind of the transformation that happened, when Dell, Michael Dell really kind of took all the intermediaries out of the process of delivering, computers and technology and really looking kind of on a broad basis and saying, okay, distribution networks are going to change and supply chains are going to change, and the value of like a distributor is being minimalized because of just-in-time capabilities and those sorts of things. Nobody having inventory anymore, and just having what you need when you need it based on predictive analytics. So a lot of really mind-stretching things, but exciting stuff as well too, to think about how we can play a role.
And the opportunities that drives.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, I know that it's time for you to head off to your next session. Just one easy question. If listeners would like to just check out Corcentric, learn a little bit more about you, where's the best place that they go? I
think, like most places, start with the website. There's a lot of great material on there, a lot of great explanations of what we're doing, videos, customer testimonials that give kind of real life, examples of how we're helping businesses. And then from there, we love to get engaged and start the dialogue and very much believe in kind of diagnose before we prescribe. So, it just starts with a conversation and then, we can take that journey from there.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Matt, for joining me.
You.
Appreciate it. I'm going to include a link to the website on our show notes. Those will be artofprocurement.com. But thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alrighty.
Hi there. I want to thank you for tuning in to today's podcast. You can check out all of our back catalogue at artofprocurement.com/podcast, where you can also subscribe to our newsletter to make sure that you never miss an episode. And if you found value in today's show, I'd love if you would tell a peer, or perhaps go and rate and review by going to artofprocurement.com/review. Word of mouth really is the best way to help the podcast grow, and if you're able to do either one of those things, I would truly appreciate it.